Hello and welcome this in the final of our three-part series on cocaine. And this week we're going to continue a small bit in relation to trafficking, just focusing on the methods of trafficking, and we're going to talk a small bit about the Irish context and where our journey in relation to cocaine from Colombia and Venezuela across the Caribbean and up into Africa and into Europe and indeed onto our shores, the journey will finally end. So I suppose just focusing on the issue of the methods of trafficking into Europe, I think it's important to note that maritime transport really is the main mode of transport in moving cocaine, and it allows the transportation of large quantities at one time. And over two-thirds of EU seizures are involved in this form of transportation. Now, smaller private boats play a part as well, bringing large quantities of cocaine in single shipments entering Europe at many points. And indeed, we're very familiar with that in Ireland, when in September 2014, 1 ton of cocaine was picked up off the coast, which had actually came from Venezuela. So an important development has been an increase in the use of containers in commercial vessels to ship cocaine. So those large steel containers that we often see come in on the back of ships, and then often onto the back of trucks and indeed trains. And they use these commercial vessels to ship cocaine, and it often makes detection more difficult. There's an ever-evolving array of concealment methods and in the importation of cocaine in all forms, such as the incorporation even into plastics, which is a particular concern, obviously, in terms of the health implications in relation to that, or other materials that require chemical extraction, which continues to be a concern throughout Europe. Indeed, they can be stored in plastics, where extraction facilities are used to retrieve cocaine base from the plastics. Concealment of drugs within shipments of perishable goods is also another common practice, and it allows the procedures around perishable goods, which means that perishable goods have to be moved quite quickly through customs. Means detection is quite challenging. And one of the most common examples I often use when giving drug education is that from Colombia we also import quite a lot of bananas, and if you go into the port in Bogota, you have huge containers full of thousands and thousands of bananas, and individual containers of thousands of containers, and they will actually remove the banana, fill it with cocaine, and trying to detect or find it can be hugely challenging. And it just gives you a sense of the scale of challenge in relation to addressing the issue of cocaine trafficking. The methods used for contained trafficking have also evolved in a lot of ways. For example, there has been a shift from concealment, which we just spoke about there, and within the container or cargo, to actually a rip-on, rip-off method, which by 2012 accounted for the majority of seizures. So this basically means that there'd be a full containers filled with cocaine, and they put them on, and they rip them on, and they rip them straight off without concealment. And corrupt officials and port employees facilitate this form of trafficking, and staff involved in the aviation industry have also been vulnerable in this regard as well, as illustrated by 2 cases there in 2016 of Nigerian airline crew members in London who were arrested for cocaine smuggling for quite a large amount as well. Cocaine trafficking by air involves individual couriers, aid freight aboard commercial flights, and use of private aircraft. However, compared with maritime, it's relatively small in terms of the quantities that we're talking about there. Couriers transport cocaine on commercial flights, whether internally, that's swallowed or stuffed in their baggage, or less frequently on their body. Some concealment methods, such as the use of cocaine incorporated into breast implants, involve surgical procedures, and obviously they endanger the individual in that regard on cocaine couriers, and pose significant risks to the lives of the couriers. While ingestion by smugglers of numerous packages can result in death if a package ruptures, if you can imagine, essentially they will suffer with an extreme overdose, and if it does rupture in the stomach, he has access to a huge amount of blood vessels, so its ability to pass through the body and have serious effects on the body are quite significant. I suppose until recently, cocaine smuggled in this way was always in powder form, but they have now evolved to transport it in a liquid form, and that's to avoid the scanning equipment that's now present in a lot of airports. So it's another, again, it shows you how traffickers constantly will evolve as detection methods improve. The traffickers will evolve in terms of how they traffic their substance. I suppose there's very little research around drug trafficking, specifically into Ireland. Europol believes there is a Colombian drug cells in places like Spain, Netherlands, and the UK, and from there is where they really control the movement of drugs throughout Europe. Um, and I suppose in an Irish context, there was a noting of some research that identified loyalist groups in Northern Ireland as being part of the trafficking process. But generally, the methods remain the same, with maritime methods being the most common route of getting drugs into Ireland, obviously, given the fact that we're an island nation. Cocaine became the second most common main problem drug reported in 2019 in Ireland. So, having ranked third behind opiates and the cannabis between 2015 and 2018, the proportion of cocaine cases increased from 7.9% in 2013, and in 2019, which is the most recent record, it had jumped to 24%. So an almost threefold increase there in cocaine use in that period. The median age when entering treatment also increased just slightly from 29 to 2013 to 30 in 2019. And it gives you a sense of people that maybe will be in employment, not have the means to buy cocaine, and in that period of life where they're more likely to take risk in relation to drug use as well. And over that period, the majority of cases were male, 80% in fact, and the proportion of female cases increased slightly, alright, but still it's relatively low at 20.2% in 2019. The proportion of cases with polydrug use decreased from 77% in 2013 to 58% in 2019, where we're seeing people actually have, using single use of the cocaine and not mixing it with anything. And then in 2019, the most common additional drugs used with cannabis were alcohol, which is quite common. Often people will actually use cocaine in order to stay drinking for longer, which is quite a common thing. And then the other things that they will use is cannabis, which is often to come down off it and able to get some sleep. That's 47% of people will use cannabis with it, and benzodiazepines for similar reasons. And probably when we get to the use of benzodiazepines, you're probably at a far greater level of use in that regard. And then I suppose just to finally finish up, in relation to kind of some of the facts, is that crack cocaine has now definitely emerged, and it seems to have taken a hold in Irish society. And has accounted for about 14.3% of cases that were treated for cocaine as their main problem in 2018. So look, cocaine travels an incredible journey in order to get to be used here in Ireland. And I hope you've enjoyed the three series, but I hope you reflect on the facts in terms of what it's cut with in terms of production, and never mind what it's cut with along its journey as it goes from Colombia into Venezuela, into the Caribbean, or up through Mexico, and out around the world, using trafficking routes into Africa, coming in from the east, from the Balkan areas, and think about the vulnerable communities that are often exploited, and the vulnerable members of that community that are often exploited along that journey. And that's not just to account for obviously the health implications when using cocaine and what you're snorting. There is no quality control in relation to cocaine use, and what you're snorting can be mixed with a number of things. And as we just outlined in this session, the fact that some cocaine has been imported within plastics and extracted from plastics shows you just what you're messing with. So I hope you enjoy the three series. Again, everything we presented to you were facts. We don't form opinions. We just give you facts, and we hope that you take this information and make better life choices for yourself. So take care, and thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. For more information, feel free to get in touch with Limerick City Deps, ldeps@limerickcitycdp.ie.